Okay, seniors, well, we're going to tackle a really quick lesson today. We got two sonnets, two very, very quick, to the point, but great sonnets, okay? And we're going to be covering another favorite of mine. I know I always say so-and-so is a favorite writer of mine, but John Milton today, who's, man, he's terrific. Milton is such a good writer. And what he's famous for is the book Paradise Lost, which we're going to read an excerpt of tomorrow. But today we're going to tackle two of his sonnets, and one of them in particular is very famous. The other one I believe is known. I don't know how famous it is, but I like both of these a lot, and I think they're really relevant to you, which is what makes them really useful. Okay, so let's start by giving you a quick review. Italian or Petrarchan sonnets, which we covered way back before Christmas, so I know none of you remember. But is a sonnet type that, while all 14 lines are listed in order, there's no line breaks. But really, you can look at these as two sections. The first 8 lines, which set what's called an octave, which set up a problem of some sort. And the last 6, a sestet, that's going to give you some sort of solution. All right, it's a really simple pattern. It's got a rhyme scheme that's used pretty traditionally, but really what I wanted you to see was that 8-line problem, 6-line solution is what we're looking for. Okay. So flip over to page 522, and we're going to look at sonnet number 7, or How Soon Hath Time, which it's sometimes called. We're going to look at this one first, all right? So this one is a little bit more traditional than the next one. The next one has a couple of things that break the pattern I just told you, but this one is a good one to start with. So let's do the first 4 lines. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. I'm okay, though. I'm not sick. It says, How soon hath time, the subtle thief of youth, stolen on his wing my 23rd year? My hasting days fly on with full career, but my late spring no bud or blossom showeth. So what we have here is a guy who is 23 years old. He's just turned 23, and he's realized how quick time has flown by, and he's looking around, and he's like, man, I don't have much to show for who I am and where I am right now. So I realize this was written back in the 1600s, but let's look at today, 2021. Or when I made this, it's 2021. When you're 23, there's certain things that expectations our society has of you. You should be getting into a career, whether it's just because you've just finished college and you're starting a career, or you've been in one for about 4 or 5 years, so you're starting to make your way. There's a level of maturity expected. A lot of times your relationships are supposed to be becoming more mature, and you're supposed to be looking at, if you're not married, thinking about getting married. Some people who are married, maybe having kids. The adult world is there, and it's on you. This guy's hit 23 and he's realized none of that's happening. That's the whole my late spring, no bud or blossom show. So I don't have anything to show for where I am. He's sitting here looking at his life and saying, man, I've wasted it. Now, you're not 23 yet, but it's not far away. And some of you right now at 18, where you should be, you're not there. And you could really relate to this, that, man, judging by what society says I should be as a high school senior about to graduate, I'm not there. Maybe you don't have a clue what you're going to do in 5 months when you're out of here. Maybe you don't really have an idea about a career. Maybe you're still not really interested in a serious relationship. All these things that you're supposed to be getting to, maybe you're not there yet, and you're like, I feel what this guy feels. Let's look at the next 4 lines that are going to we've kind of got the problem. Let's see what the rest of it is. Perhaps my semblance might deceive the truth, that I to manhood am arrived so near, and inward rightness doth much less appear, that some more timely happy spirits endureth. So he's pointing out, I don't feel like I'm 23. I don't feel like I'm an adult. I don't feel mature. And again, you're 18. As the one person watching, well, I don't know who's watching this, but I'm assuming just my students, maybe, are watching it. I've been 23. I'm the one who has out of this group. And I remember, not really feeling like an adult. Guys, I'm 42 and I don't feel like an adult some days, except for when I go to the doctor and I realize I'm breaking down, which is my fault, not age's fault. Excuse me. As you can tell, breaking down, right? But you get this. You get the whole, society has these milestones we're supposed to reach. I mean, go back to your family reunion at being 26 or 27 and not be married, and watch Aunt so-and-so tell you about a guy from her church who has a daughter or a son, depending on who you are, that, they want to set you up with. Because, everyone knows if you're not married by your mid-20s, something's wrong with you. So they all go after that. Although some of us may just not want that. I mean, be in your mid to late 20s or your 30s and be married and don't have kids. People are automatically going to think, oh man, what's wrong with you? You don't want kids. So it's easy to let society dictate these things to us and make us feel like we're not living up to what we should be. But now we come to the solution. In line 9, you get your typical volts, a turning point. You get the yet, and that's how we know we're changing. Yet, Be it less or more, or soon or slow, it shall be still, in strictest measure, even to that same lot, however means are high, toward which time leads me, in the will of heaven. All is, if I ever have grace to use it so, as ever in my great taskmaster's eye. Now, those last 6 lines can be confusing, but let me tell you what I get from it. I get that this person saying, here's the deal. Whatever's going to happen is still going to happen. It may not happen in the time that society tells me it's supposed to happen, but if I keep my eye on God, if I keep my eye on, doing my best and just follow the path I believe He's laid out for me, then I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to be where I need to be when I need to be there. And while it may not be, I may get married at 32, may get married at 58. Who knows? But I may not get married at all. But, I'm going to do it in the time that is right for me and what God wants for me, not what society tells me. Guys, this is a magic sonnet for you, okay? Because you're going to have this situation where the world's different now, okay? And not in good ways, okay? The world's a very different place for you guys in your generation, and you need stuff like this to kind of let you know that, hey, look, if I don't have things done in the time that, my parents or society tells me I should, it's okay. Still keep trying, keep your eyes on the Lord and know where you're going, but understand that it's okay if you're struggling to get there. All right. There's nothing magic about the time frame that society has presented for you. What should happen is do it when you're ready and be, in God's will in that instance. Okay. All right. The next one is the more famous one, Sonnet 19. All right. And this is called When I Consider How My Light Is Spent. I would argue this is Milton's most famous sonnet, to be honest with you. Okay. So this one does break a little bit. Actually, the volta in this one doesn't come in line 9. It's the second half of line 8, but you'll see it. There's a semicolon and then our conjunction, but. So let's look at the problem. He says, when I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve therewith my Maker, and present my true account, lest he returning chide, doth God exact day labor light denied? I fondly ask. So our first half, our problem. Now we've got the age again. Milton likes to give us an age range here, which I appreciate. He says half of his days are spent. So, 40s, 50s, somewhere in there. I mean, probably their life expectancy was lower, but let's shoot for the 40s or 50s. And he's realizing now that half of his life is over, and he's got one major talent, and he's worried that he's unable to use it now. And let me give you some context. You don't always want to assume author and speaker are the same thing, but in this poem, we want to make that assumption. See, Milton loses his eyesight at some point in his life. And man, let me tell you something, to be a writer and blind, probably not very easy. I mean, even today, you can get, a computer that's got like a keyboard that lets you indicate through Braille or some other form what the letters are. You could do that, but it still would be difficult even once you learn to do it. Imagine in Milton's time having this problem. So Milton's got a question that I don't think any of us would ever ask. If you were, you thought your goal in life was to be a teacher and you had a stroke, you wouldn't be questioning about how am I still going to be a teacher? What am I going to do? God's going to be disappointed. He gave me this ability and now I'm not using it. Most of us would be like, God's going to give me a pass. He understands. But that's not what Milton decided. In fact, that does God exact day labor light denied is kind of the key. He's like, I'm worried right now that God's going to accuse, or God's going to think I'm abusing the talent he's given me. He even references talent as in the parable of the talents, where the servant who buried his and returned it to the Lord was punished for that. So Milton feels like God's given me a talent, and yes, life has thrown me a curveball, but that doesn't mean I am to stop. And, he really wants to do something about that. And guys, let me kind of give you the next part of this, and it's going to go with what we're about to read. Milton dictated most, if not all, of the lines of his most famous work, which we're going to look at tomorrow, which is found in this book, Paradise Lost, which you'll notice pretty, well, you can't see that because I've got the stupid bright on and it makes me look like I'm ghostly pale, but pretty extensive poem here. We're looking at, let me see how many lines we've got here. Well, I don't know how many lines, but I know we have over almost 350 pages in here of an epic poem now, and what goes into that. This was done while the man was blind, okay? So he figures it out, and he's going to give us our answer here, but he finds a way. But he was worried, and he didn't give up like so many of us are prone to do because, we hit a little bit of a hiccup. And going blind, not a little hiccup. So let's look at the solution. We've seen the problem. If the problem is, hey, I have this problem now, and I'm worried that I'm not going to be able to do what God put me on the planet to do. How am I going to ever get by? Here's what he says. But patience to prevent that murmur soon replies. Now notice patience is who's responding to him, and that's important, because that's what we're being told in the second half is the importance of patience. It's patience. It's personified. How do I know that? Because patience is capitalized. When you see a trait or an item or something that's normally not capitalized, all of a sudden capitalized, especially in poetry, it's probably being personified. Anyway, but patience to prevent that murmur soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly. Thousands at his bidding speed and post o'er land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. So the point here is that God doesn't need you as much as you think he might. God has plenty of people to do his bidding. The people, what he wants is the person who, whatever your situation is, he says you bear, let me read it exactly, bear his mild yoke. Okay, so whatever obstacles you find yourself in, the people who deal with it and deal with it with a heart of gratitude and a heart, an attitude of I want to be, I still am going to be productive. If you are a teacher and you have a stroke, being back in the classroom might not be a thing you can do, but there's other things you can do. You can write. You maybe speaking is not a thing, but maybe you can write. There's all sorts of ways you can get around difficulties, and that's what we want. This is God doesn't need us the way we think he does. God has plenty of ways to carry out his goals. And then the really key line there is at the end, they also serve who only stand and wait, and that's patience. Sometimes you have to wait on an answer from God. Sometimes you have to wait on a direction from God. It's not always going to come because you said a prayer and then immediately you're going to wait and there's going to be a big neon sign with an arrow pointing what you need to do. It'd be nice if that's how things worked. But at that point, what would the purpose in faith be, right? So there is this element of waiting, and that's what makes this sonnet so beautiful and why it applies to you guys. Because once again, you're going to have times of I don't know in your life. And you're going to have times where you expect God to move right away. And the fact is patience is required in our life. And sometimes we have to wait for the right setting or the right situation to present itself where we can move forward. And that's the thing Milton realizes. And of course, Milton goes on to write this, amazing piece of literature that is going to be, wow, just, even though you've probably never read it, I'm assuming most of you haven't, you don't know how much this book has impacted the way you see things, especially if you find yourself being a person of faith. I mean, the concept of how Satan is, of hell, those types of things, so much of that is found in this book. And while, yes, it's not the Bible and it's not biblical stuff, and it's a work of fiction, I still feel like this is a very inspired book. And I feel like the presentations we're going to see tomorrow of Satan and how he felt are very real and they're very spot on. I feel like that's probably what happened. And it really is a way for us to connect. And it's not that you need to understand Satan or his ideas, but to see what caused him to be the way he is and how we're just as prone to it. That's the magic of Paradise Lost. All right. That's for tomorrow, though. So come back tomorrow. We're going to talk about an excerpt from Paradise Lost, not the whole thing. Hopefully, I can convince some of you to actually read the book. It's work, but it's work that's worth it. Trust me. Okay, guys. Well, I've turned these two short poems into about a 15-minute lecture. I could do more. Trust me. I really enjoy talking about these and what its relevance is to you. But I realize you guys have other work. I realize those of you doing this at home are probably backed up with work. So I'm going to stop here. But I hopefully we'll see you tomorrow when we talk about Paradise Lost. And after that, Dante's Infernus. We have 2 days of really exciting stuff coming. So, all right. Well, have a great day.